Welcome back to Reddit Whispers. I remember the light. That's the thing that gets me, the specific quality of the light on the day it all ended. It was late afternoon in September, the kind of golden hour that painters would kill for, streaming through the west-facing windows of the house we built. We didn't just buy it, we built it. I'd swung a hammer, she'd chosen the ridiculous, perfect shade of blue for the shutters. Every nail, every floorboard was a testament to us, a physical manifestation of the life we'd woven together over 25 years. The light caught the dust motes dancing in the air, tiny golden constellations in the universe of our living room. It glinted off the silver threads in her hair as she sat in the armchair, the one I'd reupholstered for her as a birthday surprise a decade ago. It was a comfortable silence, or so I thought. I was on the sofa, nursing a cup of coffee that had long gone cold, reading a book I wasn't really absorbing, just enjoying the quiet hum of our existence. This was it, I remember thinking. This was the pinnacle. The kids were grown, successful, out forging their own lives. We had this house, this quiet, this shared history that felt as solid and real as the oak beams above our heads. She was my soulmate. It wasn't a word I used lightly, even in the privacy of my own mind. It felt too flimsy for the colossal structure of our relationship. She was more than a soulmate. She was the other half of my own consciousness, the keeper of my memories, the architect of my future. Her name was Clara. Even now, saying it feels like a violation, like speaking a sacred word in a profane context. Clara. She was the steady rhythm beneath the chaos of my life, the calm harbor I always returned to. We met in college, a cliché I know, but it felt anything but. I was a fumbling engineering student, all calculations and nervous energy. She was studying art history, and she saw the world in colors and textures I didn't even know existed. She taught me how to see. She'd point out the way the afternoon sun turned the brick of the library into a canvas of burnt sienna and ochre, and suddenly I wasn't just looking at a building anymore. I was seeing the world through her eyes, a more vibrant, more beautiful world. Our love story wasn't a whirlwind romance. It was a slow, deliberate construction, much like our house. It was built on a foundation of late-night conversations, shared pizzas, and the kind of laughter that makes your sides ache. I remember our first apartment, a tiny, drafty place with pipes that groaned like a dying beast. We painted the walls a cheerful yellow and filled it with mismatched furniture from thrift stores. It was a palace to us. It was where we learned to be a unit, to navigate the small frictions of cohabitation, to anticipate each other's needs. The way she took her coffee, 2 sugars, no cream, the way I always left my socks on the floor. We learned the topography of each other's souls. The years that followed were a blur of beautiful, ordinary life. We got married on a crisp autumn day, the leaves turning the same shades of gold and red that filled our living room on that final afternoon. I remember the slight tremble in her hands as she put the ring on my finger, the absolute certainty in her eyes when she said her vows. It was a certainty that became my compass.
Then came the children, a son and a daughter, who blew our lives wide open in the most wonderful, chaotic way. We were a team. I was the one who could soothe them back to sleep after a nightmare. She was the one who could magically mend a broken toy or a scraped knee. Our house was filled with the cacophony of childhood, the thud of running feet, the squeals of laughter, the endless, wonderful noise. We weathered the storms together. My father's death, her mother's long illness. There were financial strains, career setbacks, the relentless pressures of parenthood. But through it all, we were an unbreakable fortress. We'd sit at the kitchen table late at night, long after the kids were asleep, and we would talk. We'd dissect the day, share our fears, reaffirm our dreams. The dream was always the same, to grow old together in this house, to watch our grandchildren play on the lawn where we'd once pushed our own kids on the swings. We had inside jokes that were so old we'd forgotten their origins. We could communicate entire conversations with a single look. I knew the cadence of her breathing in her sleep, the exact way she'd sigh when she was tired. I thought I knew everything about her. I was so proud of the life we had built. It wasn't just a life, it was a legacy. Our friends looked at us as the gold standard, the couple who'd made it. "You two are the reason I still believe in marriage," a friend told me once at a dinner party. I felt a swell of pride, not of arrogance, but of deep, profound gratitude. I had done it. I had found my person, and I had built a good life with her. I believed our love was an immutable fact, a law of our personal universe as constant as gravity. Which is why, when she finally looked up from her chair, the golden light haloing her head, and spoke, the words didn't register at first. They were just sounds, vibrations in the quiet air. "James," she said, her voice even, calm, devoid of any discernible emotion. It was the lack of emotion that was so terrifying. It wasn't the voice of anger or sadness or frustration. It was the voice of a stranger making a simple statement of fact. "I don't love you anymore." The silence that followed was louder than any sound I have ever heard. It was a deafening, crushing void. The dust motes continued their lazy dance in the sunbeams. The clock on the mantelpiece, a wedding gift from her parents, continued to tick, each second a hammer blow against the fragile shell of my reality. I stared at her, waiting for the punchline. A joke, a cruel, terrible joke. Her expression remained placid. Her hands were folded neatly in her lap. She just looked at me, her eyes, the same eyes I had looked into for 25 years, now holding a truth so alien, so devastating, that my mind couldn't process it. It was like she had just announced that the sky was green, that gravity had ceased to exist. It was a fundamental untruth, an impossibility. Because our love was the bedrock of my world. It was the organizing principle of my entire adult life. Everything I was, everything I had done, was predicated on that single unwavering belief. I was Clara's husband. We were a team. We were forever. The book I was holding slipped from my fingers and landed on the rug with a soft thud. I opened my mouth to speak, to laugh, to tell her to stop kidding around, but no sound came out. The golden light of the perfect September afternoon suddenly felt cold and clinical, like the light in an operating room, illuminating the precise, clean incision that had just been made into the heart of my life. She had been my soulmate, the undeniable, absolute truth of my existence. And in the space of a single sentence, in a quiet, sun-drenched living room, she wasn't. The initial shock was a physical sensation, a wave of cold that started in my gut and spread through my limbs, leaving them numb and heavy. I felt like I was underwater, the sound of her words and the ticking of the clock muffled and distant. My brain, the logical engineering part of my brain, was scrambling for data, for an explanation that would fit the known parameters of our universe. It found nothing. It was a system error, a fatal exception. My first coherent thought was that she was sick. It had to be. A tumor, a neurological condition, something that was hijacking her mind and making her say these impossible things. I wanted to ask, "Are you ill? Have you seen a doctor?" But the words were stuck in my throat, trapped behind a wall of disbelief. I just stared at her, searching her face for some sign of the woman I knew. The lines around her eyes, the ones I had watched deepen over the years, seemed like the etchings of a stranger. The curve of her mouth, a mouth I had kissed 1,000 times, was set in a firm, resolute line I had never seen before. She didn't look ill. She looked free. And that was the most terrifying thing of all. The next few hours, or maybe it was days, are a fractured mosaic of memory. Time lost its linear progression. I remember the feeling of the plush rug beneath my feet as I finally stood up, my legs unsteady. I walked over to the window and looked out at the garden.
The roses she had so carefully tended were in their last bloom of the season, their crimson petals a stark, violent contrast to the placid blue of the sky. Everything looked the same, yet nothing was. The world outside the window was continuing on its axis, oblivious to the fact that mine had just been thrown into a catastrophic spin. I turned back to her. She hadn't moved. She was just watching me, her expression patient, as if she were waiting for a child to grasp a difficult concept. "For how long?" I finally managed to ask, my voice a hoarse whisper. "It's not a switch that flips, James," she said, her tone still unnervingly calm. "It's been a long time. I can't pretend anymore." A long time, the words echoed in the cavernous space that had opened up inside my chest. How long? A week? A month? A year? I started a frantic, desperate audit of our recent past. Our anniversary dinner last month, had she seemed distant then? I remembered her smiling, laughing at my stupid jokes. We'd held hands across the table. The vacation we took in the spring, the picture showed us arm in arm on a beach, the very image of a happy, contented couple. Was it all a lie? Was she an actress, playing the part of my loving wife while her heart was somewhere else entirely? My mind reeled. Every shared smile, every casual touch, every "I love you" from the past months, years even, was now suspect. It felt as if my entire history was being rewritten, corrupted by this new, devastating data. The foundation of our house, the one I had helped pour, felt like it was turning to sand beneath my feet. I wanted to scream, to rage, to break something. I wanted to shake her and demand that she take it back, that she tell me it was a mistake. But I was paralyzed by a profound, disorienting sense of unreality. This wasn't my life. This was a nightmare I would wake up from. But I didn't wake up. The night came, and she went upstairs to the guest room. The guest room. A room for visitors, for strangers. She had become a stranger in her own home. I was left alone in the living room, the space that had once been the heart of our family, now feeling like a cold, empty museum exhibit of a life that was over. I didn't sleep. I sat on the sofa, the same spot where I had been sitting when she detonated my world, and I watched the shadows lengthen and swallow the room. Every object mocked me. The framed photos on the mantelpiece, our wedding, the kids as babies, family vacations. They were relics from a civilization that had suddenly and inexplicably vanished. I looked at the smiling man in those pictures, so blissfully unaware, so certain of his happiness, and I felt a wave of pity and contempt for him. He was a fool, a blind, naive fool who had mistaken a stage play for reality. The following days were a study in surreal domesticity. We moved around each other with a strange, polite choreography. We were two ghosts haunting the same house, bound by 25 years of shared habits, but separated by a chasm that had opened up between us. She would make coffee in the morning, and out of habit pour me a cup. I would thank her, my voice stiff and formal. The silence was a living entity, a third person in the room, thick with all the things we weren't saying. I tried to reason with her, of course. I tried to be the engineer, the problem solver. I proposed therapy, a vacation, a change of routine, anything to fix the broken machinery of our marriage. "We can work through this," I pleaded, my voice cracking with a desperation I despised. "Whatever it is, we can fix it. We've always been able to fix things." She would just look at me with that same heartbreakingly calm expression. "Some things aren't broken, James," she said one evening. "They just end. This has ended." Her words were so final, so absolute. There was no room for negotiation. She wasn't asking for my permission or my input. She was informing me of a decision that had already been made, a conclusion that had been reached long ago in the privacy of her own heart. The illusion that this was a problem we could solve together, as a team, shattered. This wasn't a we problem. This was a her decision, and I was just collateral damage. The shock began to curdle into a raw, gnawing pain. It was a physical ache in my chest, a constant pressure that made it hard to breathe. The world lost its color, its flavor. Food tasted like ash. Music was just noise. I would go to work and move through the motions, designing bridges and calculating stress loads, my mind a million miles away, lost in the wreckage of my life. I became an expert at feigning normalcy. I could smile, make small talk, participate in meetings, all while my inner world was a raging inferno. But the nights were the worst. Lying alone in the bed we had shared for a quarter of a century, the empty space beside me was a cold, vast wilderness. I could still smell her scent on the pillows, a ghostly reminder of everything I had lost. The house, our beautiful house, became a prison. Every room was a chapter in a story that was now a lie.
The kitchen where we taught the kids to cook, the den where we watched movies on rainy Sundays, the bedroom where we had loved and dreamed and whispered our secrets in the dark. It was all tainted. The memories were still there, but they were no longer a source of comfort. They were daggers, each one a fresh reminder of the profound, devastating truth. I was living in the ruins of a life I thought was perfect, and I had never even seen the cracks forming in the walls. Denial is a powerful anesthetic, but it wears off. In its place comes a frantic, agonizing search for why. The question became my tormentor, a constant companion that whispered in my ear during the long, sleepless nights and screamed at me in the silence of my car. Why? Why now? Why us? I was an engineer. My world was governed by logic, by cause and effect. For every action, there is a reaction. For every structural failure, there is a point of stress, a flaw in the design. I began to tear apart the blueprint of our marriage, examining every joint, every support beam, looking for the fatal flaw I had missed. My memory became a crime scene, and I was the detective, sifting through 25 years of evidence, searching for clues. I replayed conversations, dissected arguments, analyzed moments of silence. That vacation to Italy 10 years ago, was she really happy? Or was the smile in that photo by the Trevi Fountain just a performance? That argument we had about my work hours, was it really about the hours? Or was it a symptom of a deeper cancer I had been blind to? This process of retroactive forensics was a special kind of torture. It poisoned every good memory, transforming moments of joy into potential evidence of her deception. The woman I had loved was being replaced in my mind by a stranger, a master of disguise who had lived by my side for decades, her true feelings hidden behind a mask of contentment. I became obsessed. I needed a reason, a tangible explanation that I could hold on to, something that would make sense of the senseless. Was it another man? The thought was a white-hot poker to the gut. I started to check her phone records, her emails, hating myself for the violation, for the man I was becoming. But the need to know was a ravenous hunger. I found nothing, no secret lover, no clandestine messages. In a way, it would have been easier. Betrayal by another person was a narrative I could understand. It was a story as old as time, with a clear villain and a clear victim. But this was something far more terrifying. This was a betrayal by the person I thought I knew best, a betrayal of the very reality we had built together. Her reasons, when they finally came, were not delivered in a single dramatic confession, but trickled out in brief, painful conversations. They were not the concrete, logical explanations I craved. They were vague, ethereal things that I couldn't grasp, like smoke slipping through my fingers. "I lost myself, James," she said one evening as we sat at opposite ends of the kitchen table, the vast expanse of polished wood like a desolate no-man's land between us. I was a wife, a mother, but I forgot how to be Clara. I didn't understand. Her being a wife and a mother was our life, our shared project. It was what we had both wanted, what we had celebrated. "We built a beautiful life," I insisted, my voice pleading. "We have 2 amazing children, a home, a history." "We built your dream, James," she replied, her voice soft but firm. "It was a good dream, but it was never entirely mine." That was the moment the floor truly gave way. My dream, not ours.
The suggestion was monstrous. Every decision, from the house we built to the schools the kids attended, had been a joint one, or so I had believed. Now she was recasting our entire history, painting me as a benevolent dictator and her as a silent, compliant subject. The anger came then, hot and blinding. It was a welcome relief from the cold, numbing pain. How dare she? How dare she rewrite our life to fit her new narrative? How dare she make me the villain in the story of our demise? That's not fair, I seethed. You were happy. I know you were. I saw it. I felt it. Did you? She asked, a genuine, sad curiosity in her eyes. Or did you see what you wanted to see? Her question haunted me. Had I been that blind, that self-absorbed? Had I been so caught up in the pride of our creation, the perfect family, the perfect life, that I had failed to see the person standing next to me? I started to remember things differently. Little moments I had dismissed at the time now loomed large in my memory, imbued with a new sinister significance. I remembered her talking about taking a pottery class years ago, a passion she'd had in college. I had encouraged it, of course, but had I really listened? Or had I seen it as a quaint hobby, a minor distraction from her real job as the co-manager of our life? I remembered her wanting to go back to work after the kids were in high school. We had discussed it, and I had pointed out, logically, that we didn't need the money, that it would complicate our comfortable routine. She had agreed. But now I replayed that conversation and heard the resignation in her voice, saw the light dim slightly in her eyes. I had seen her agreement as a sign of our shared priorities, our unity. Now I saw it as a capitulation. The illusions were crumbling one by one. The image of our perfect marriage was a facade, a carefully constructed stage set, and I, the lead actor, had been so lost in my role that I had never thought to look behind the curtain. She hadn't fallen out of love with me overnight. It had been a slow, quiet erosion, a gradual drifting away that I had been utterly oblivious to. She had been sending signals, I realize now, subtle distress flares that I had either ignored or misinterpreted. The quietness I had mistaken for contentment was actually resignation. The stability I had cherished as a strength, she had experienced as a cage. The pain of this realization was profound, far deeper than the pain of a simple betrayal. It was an indictment of my entire character. I wasn't just a man whose wife had left him. I was a man who had failed to see his wife, to truly know her. I had loved an idea of her, a version of her that fit neatly into my perfect life. I had loved the wife, the mother, the partner. But Clara, the individual, with her own unfulfilled dreams and secret longings, had become invisible to me. The shock was gone, replaced by a hollow, aching grief. I wasn't just mourning the end of my marriage. I was mourning the loss of a truth I had built my life upon. The woman I had shared my bed with for 25 years was, in many ways, a stranger. And the man I saw in the mirror, the loving husband, the attentive partner, he was a stranger too. He was a character I had been playing, and I no longer recognized him. Acceptance doesn't arrive like a thunderclap. It seeps in slowly, quietly, like the tide coming in on a dark beach. For months, I existed in a state of suspended animation, a limbo of grief and anger. The house was sold, its contents divided with the cold, brutal efficiency of lawyers. The physical act of dismantling our life was a surreal and painful process. Every object we sorted held a memory, a ghost of a shared past. The rocking chair where she nursed our children, the dining table that had hosted countless family dinners, the ridiculous, oversized coffee mugs we bought on a whim during a weekend getaway. Packing them into boxes felt like packing away parts of myself. I moved into a sterile, impersonal apartment that echoed with silence. The man who had built his own home was now living in a beige box, surrounded by the ghosts of a life he no longer had. The first few months were a blur of takeout containers, sleepless nights, and the hollow companionship of the television. I was adrift, a ship without a rudder, my compass shattered. I saw the kids, of course. They were caught in the middle, trying to navigate the new, fractured landscape of their family. They were adults, but they were still our children, and the pain in their eyes was a reflection of my own. They were confused, hurt, trying to make sense of the inexplicable. How do you explain to your children that the foundation of their world was not as solid as it seemed? How do you tell them that the love they had witnessed their entire lives was, at least for one person, an illusion? Our conversations were stilted, careful. They loved us both, and they were terrified of choosing sides. I tried to be the strong father, the stable one, but there were times when my own grief would overwhelm me, and I would see the fear in their faces as they looked at their broken, lost dad. The change began subtly. It started with small things. One morning I woke up before the sun, the familiar dread a weight on my chest. But instead of lying there staring at the ceiling, I got up. I put on my running shoes and I went out.
I ran until my lungs burned and my legs ached, the physical pain a welcome distraction from the emotional turmoil. As the sun rose, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, a flicker of something other than pain. It wasn't happiness, not even close. It was just a moment of being present, of feeling the cold air on my face and the steady rhythm of my own heartbeat. It was the first step. I started to build a new routine, a new life, brick by painful brick. I started cooking for myself, real meals, not just microwave dinners. The simple act of chopping vegetables, of following a recipe was grounding. It was a creative process, a small act of control in a world that had felt so utterly out of my control. I started reconnecting with old friends, people I had let drift away in the comfortable bubble of my married life. I had to learn how to be just James again, not Clara and James. It was awkward at first. I was a social amputee, learning to navigate the world without a limb I had leaned on for 25 years. I started to explore my own interests, things that had been dormant for years. I picked up my old guitar, my fingers clumsy on the frets at first. I went to museums, not to appreciate the art through someone else's eyes, but to see what moved me. I was on a journey of rediscovery, getting to know the man I was when I wasn't defined by my role as a husband. There were good days and bad days. There were days when a song on the radio or the scent of a particular flower would send me spiraling back into the depths of my grief. The anger was still there, a simmering coal that would flare up at unexpected moments. I still had moments of profound loneliness, the silence of my apartment a crushing weight. But the good days started to outnumber the bad. I began to look at my past with a different perspective. The anger at Clara for her deception started to fade, replaced by a sad, reluctant understanding. I couldn't condone the way she had ended things, the years of silence that had preceded the explosion. But I could, finally, start to see my own complicity in the breakdown. I had been a good man, a faithful husband, a loving father, but I had also been oblivious. I had been a passive participant in my own marriage, coasting on the assumption that everything was fine because it was fine for me. I had stopped being curious about my wife. I had stopped asking the right questions. I had taken her and our life for granted. It was a bitter pill to swallow, a painful blow to my ego. But it was also liberating. It meant that I wasn't just a victim of a random senseless act. I had played a role, and if I had played a role in the failure, then I could learn from it. I could be better. I still don't know if I believe in the concept of a soulmate. It seems too simplistic now, too much of a fairy tale. I believe in love, but I now know that it's not a static state of being. It's not a house you build and then live in forever without maintenance. It's a garden that needs constant tending, constant attention, constant curiosity. You have to be willing to see the person next to you change and grow, and you have to be willing to change and grow with them. My story doesn't have a neat, happy ending. I haven't met someone new. I don't know if I ever will.
But I am not the same man who sat on that sofa in the golden afternoon light, his world crumbling around him. I am scarred, yes, but I am also stronger. I am more self-aware. I am, for the first time in a very long time, truly myself. The illusions are gone, and what's left is just me. And for now, that's enough. That's how my story unfolded. But tell me, what's the one red flag you wish you hadn't ignored? Drop it in the comments, and if this story spoke to you, like and subscribe to Reddit Whispers.